The Pine Barrens of southern New Jersey span over 1 million acres of dense forest and sandy soil. It is a place of isolation where the silence is heavy and the shadows seem to stretch longer than they should. Locals have long whispered about something that watches from the trees. This vast wilderness sits right in the middle of the most densely populated region of the United States, yet it remains largely untamed and mysterious. The cedar water runs red with iron, and the pine trees twist into strange shapes that obscure the line between reality and imagination. For centuries, travelers have reported an unease that settles deep in their bones when crossing through this territory after the sun goes down. Deep within these woods, a legend has persisted for nearly 300 years. It is a story that has terrified generations of residents and baffled investigators who have tried to separate fact from folklore. The creature is said to emit a blood-curdling scream that sounds like a combination of a human wail and the screech of a dying animal. Those who claim to have seen it describe a beast that defies biological classification. It is a patchwork monster of hooves and wings and horns that seems to belong to a different world entirely. This is the story of the Jersey Devil and the dark history that birthed one of America's most enduring mysteries. The origin of this nightmare begins in the year 1735 in a small settlement known as Leeds Point. The winter winds were howling through the cracks of a modest wooden home belonging to the Leeds family. The matriarch of the family was a woman named Jane Leeds, who was affectionately known as Mother Leeds by her neighbors. She was a woman exhausted by the demands of colonial life and the burden of raising a large family in the harsh environment of the Atlantic coast. Her husband was a man who did little to help with the children, which left Jane to manage the household alone. Jane Leeds was pregnant with her 13th child, and the prospect of another mouth to feed filled her with despair rather than joy. The family was struggling to survive, and the relentless cycle of poverty seemed inescapable. One stormy evening, while surrounded by her 12 other children, she looked up at the ceiling in frustration and shouted a curse that would echo through history. She cried out that she was tired of children and let this one be a devil. It was a moment of pure exhaustion, but in the folklore of the Pine Barrens, words have power, and the universe was listening. The night the child was born was one of the worst storms the region had ever seen. Rain lashed against the roof, and thunder shook the foundations of the small house. A group of local midwives and neighbors gathered to assist Mother Leeds with the delivery. At first, everything seemed normal, as a healthy baby boy was brought into the world. He was pale and crying like any other infant. The midwife smiled and congratulated Jane on the birth. For a brief moment, relief washed over the room as the storm raged outside. However, that relief was shattered in a matter of seconds. Before the eyes of the horrified onlookers, the infant began to change. Its pink skin turned dark and covered in coarse black fur. The small hands morphed into leathery wings, and the feet twisted into cloven hooves. The head of the child elongated into something resembling a horse or a goat, and horns sprouted from its forehead. The creature let out a high-pitched scream that shattered the lantern glass and plunged the room into darkness. The midwives scrambled back in terror as the beast thrashed about the room, knocking over furniture and attacking anyone who dared to come close. The creature did not stay to be cradled by its mother. It unfurled its massive bat-like wings and took flight inside the cramped quarters of the Leeds home. It flew around the room in a frenzy before spotting the open chimney. With a powerful flap of its wings, it ascended the chimney stack and burst out into the stormy night. The creature disappeared into the darkness of the Pine Barrens, leaving behind a traumatized family and a legend that would never die. The people of Leeds Point claim the devil still haunted the swamps, waiting for the right moment to return. news of the monstrous birth spread quickly through the scattered communities of southern New Jersey. The Leeds family became pariahs, as neighbors feared that the curse might spread to their own homes. Children were warned not to venture into the woods after dark, lest the Leeds devil carry them away. While many dismissed the story as a tall tale invented to scare superstitious farmers, the reports of strange tracks and slaughtered livestock began to mount. The creature was no longer just a rumor, it was a physical presence that stalked the edges of civilization. By the year 1740, the local clergy decided that something had to be done. A minister from a nearby town arrived to perform an exorcism in an attempt to banish the beast from the Pine Barrens. The ritual was performed with great solemnity, but it is said that the creature only mocked the holy men from the shadows of the forest. While the exorcism supposedly bound the monster for 100 years, the sightings never truly stopped. The Jersey Devil had become a permanent fixture of the landscape, woven into the very fabric of the region. In the early 19th century, a naval hero named Commodore Stephen Decatur visited the Hanover Iron Works in the Pine Barrens to test cannonballs. During his visit, he went to the firing range and saw a strange flying creature flapping across the sky. It was described as having a wingspan of several feet and a distinct horse-like head. Decatur was a marksman, and he fired a cannonball directly at the beast. Witnesses claimed the shot went right through the wing of the creature, but it did not fall. It simply continued its flight unaffected and vanished into the trees. Another famous historical figure who encountered the legend was Joseph Bonaparte, the brother of Napoleon Bonaparte. After his exile, he owned a large estate in Bordentown, New Jersey, near the edge of the Pine Barrens. He was often seen hunting in the woods, and on one occasion he claimed to have seen the Jersey Devil while tracking game. He described it as a strange animal that looked like a kangaroo with wings. Joseph was a man of science and education, yet he could not explain what he had witnessed that day in the American wilderness. Throughout the 19th century, the legend grew as more farmers reported livestock being killed in brutal ways. Sheep were found torn apart, and chickens were snatched from their coops, leaving only strange hoofprints behind. The descriptions of the creature became more consistent over time. It was almost always described as a bipedal creature, standing about 4 to 6 feet tall with a kangaroo-like body, bat wings, a horse head, and a forked tail. The eyes were said to glow a deep red in the darkness, mesmerizing anyone who looked directly into them. The most significant event in the history of the Jersey Devil occurred in January of 1909. This period is known as the Phenomenal Week. During these 7 days, the creature was seen by thousands of people across 3 states. It was no longer hiding in the deep woods of the Pine Barrens. It had ventured into the towns and cities, causing mass hysteria. The sheer volume of reports from credible witnesses during this week forces even the most skeptical historians to pause and wonder what exactly happened. It began on Sunday morning, January 16th, when a man named Thakara in Woodbury, New Jersey, saw a strange creature flying over the street. He described it as a glowing shadow with wings. Later that same day in Bristol, Pennsylvania, a man named John McFlynn heard a noise in his backyard and saw a large animal hopping over his fence. The snow was fresh on the ground, and when neighbors investigated the next morning, they found inexplicable tracks. The prints looked like hoof marks, but they were in a single file line, as if a bipedal horse had walked a tightrope. The panic escalated on Tuesday morning, when a Burlington, New Jersey police officer named James Sackville was walking his beat. He spotted a winged beast in an alleyway hissing at him. Officer Sackville was a veteran lawman, not prone to flights of fancy. He drew his service revolver and fired several shots at the creature. He was certain he hit it, but the beast let out a screech and flew straight up into the air, disappearing over the rooftops. Sackville later filed a formal police report detailing the encounter, which remains on record today. Later that same day in Gloucester, New Jersey, a couple named Mr. and Mrs. Evans watched from their window as the creature circled their roof for 10 minutes. They described it in vivid detail, noting the head of a horse, the wings of a bat, and a tail like a rat. Mr. Evans was a well-respected member of the community, and his testimony carried weight. By the middle of the week, the newspapers in Philadelphia and New Jersey were running front-page headlines warning citizens about the flying death and the mysterious vampire of the air. The most baffling physical evidence left behind during the phenomenal week was the footprints. They were found on rooftops in backyards, and even in enclosed courtyards where no animal should have been able to enter. The tracks were cloven hooves, but the spacing was inconsistent with any known animal. Sometimes they were inches apart, and other times they were feet apart, suggesting the creature was hopping. In some towns, the tracks went straight up the side of walls and continued onto the roof, defying the laws of gravity. In Haddon Heights, a trolley car filled with passengers was attacked by the creature. The driver saw it flying low over the tracks and slammed on the brakes. The beast hovered in front of the trolley car, screeching at the terrified passengers inside. The conductor grabbed a heavy wrench and banged on the window to scare it away. The creature eventually lost interest and flew off into the night, leaving a car full of witnesses who would never forget the glowing red eyes staring at them from the darkness. By Thursday of that week, the entire Delaware Valley was in a state of absolute terror. Schools were closed because parents refused to let their children walk outside. Mills and factories shut down because workers were too afraid to leave their homes before dawn. Vigilante groups formed in several towns, armed with shotguns and pitchforks, determined to hunt down the monster. The police were overwhelmed with calls reporting sightings of the Jersey Devil in trees, on roofs, and in backyards. The Philadelphia Zoo offered a $10,000 reward for the capture of the creature alive. This was a massive sum of money in 1909, and it spurred professional hunters and trappers to descend on the Pine Barrens. They set traps and scoured the woods, but came back empty-handed. The zoo director speculated that the creature might be a prehistoric survivor, like a pterodactyl that had somehow lived undetected in the caves and swamps of the region. As the week drew to a close, the hysteria began to subside, but the questions remained. Skeptics began to offer theories to explain the mass panic. Some suggested it was an elaborate hoax orchestrated by a showman named Norman Jeffries. Jeffries was a publicist for a local dime museum, and he had actually painted a kangaroo with stripes and attached fake wings to it. He admitted to the stunt later, but his hoax did not account for the hundreds of sightings that occurred miles away from his location, or the tracks found on rooftops. Zoologists and scientists tried to provide rational explanations for the sightings. One popular theory was that people were seeing a sandhill crane. These large birds have a wide wingspan and can let out a loud screech. However, sandhill cranes do not have cloven hooves, and they do not have a head that looks like a horse. Furthermore, they were not known to be in New Jersey during the dead of winter. The physical description given by witnesses simply did not match the anatomy of a crane. Another theory proposed was the hammerhead bat. This is a large fruit bat found in Africa, which has a face that looks somewhat like a horse. It is possible that one could have escaped from a ship or a private collection. The silhouette of a hammerhead bat matches the description of the Jersey Devil remarkably well. However, a tropical bat would have frozen to death almost instantly in the sub-zero temperatures of January 1909. The creature observed was active and energetic despite the cold. Historians have looked further back to find the true origin of the legend. Before the birth of the monster, there was a real man named Titan Leeds. He was a rival of Benjamin Franklin in the publishing business. Franklin jokingly predicted the death of Titan Leeds in his almanac, referring to him as a ghost and a devil. The feud between the two men was well known and played out in the public eye. It is possible that the name Leeds Devil started as political satire and eventually morphed into a folklore monster over generations. The Leeds family crest actually features dragons, which could have contributed to the imagery of the beast. Additionally, the Leeds family were Quakers, but they were considered outsiders because they dabbled in occultism and astrology. In the deeply religious atmosphere of colonial America, any deviation from the norm was viewed with suspicion. The story of Mother Leeds and her cursed child may have been a way for the community to demonize a family that they did not understand or trust. Despite the logical explanations, the sightings did not end in 1909. In 1927, a cab driver was changing a flat tire on a dark road in Salem City when the creature landed on the roof of his car. He left the jack and the tire behind and drove away on the rim, terrified for his life. He reported the incident to the police, shaking and pale, claiming the devil had tried to take him. In 1951, a group of young boys in Gibbstown saw a strange monster in the woods behind their school. They described it as a screaming half-man, half-beast. Police found strange tracks at the scene, but could not identify the animal. This sparked another brief period of panic in the local area, known as the Gibbstown Monster Scare. It proved that the legend was still very much alive in the minds of the people living in South Jersey. Even as recently as 1960, a merchant named Harry Hunt claimed to have seen the creature near May's Landing. He heard a screeching noise and saw the beast flying low over his car. The descriptions have remained remarkably consistent for over 2 centuries. While the frequency of sightings has decreased as the pine barrens have been developed, the core of the forest remains untouched, and the stories continue to be told around campfires. The legend is also tied to a mysterious location in the pine barrens known as the Blue Hole. It is a perfectly round body of water with unusually cold, clear water. Locals claim it is bottomless and that the Jersey Devil uses it as a portal to the underworld. It is a place where swimming is forbidden and children are warned to stay away. The connection between the creature and this geological oddity adds another layer of supernatural intrigue to the story. Psychologists suggest that the Jersey Devil is a manifestation of the fear of the unknown. The Pine Barrens are a dark and disorienting place. When people are isolated in such an environment, the mind plays tricks. A rustling branch becomes a wing, and a deer in the shadows becomes a monster. The power of suggestion during the phenomenal week of 1909 likely caused a mass hallucination, where people saw what they expected to see rather than what was actually there. Today, the Jersey Devil has become a cultural icon. It is the mascot for the New Jersey professional hockey team and appears on everything from t-shirts to craft beer labels. The fear has largely been replaced by local pride. The residents of the Pine Barrens have embraced their monster, turning a story of a cursed child into a symbol of the unique identity of the region. However, for those who walk the sandy trails at night, the fear is still very real. Whether the Jersey Devil is a biological anomaly, a surviving prehistoric creature, or a myth born from political satire and religious intolerance, remains an open question. The lack of a physical body or a captured specimen supports the skeptic, but the sheer number of witnesses supports the believer. It is a puzzle that fits perfectly into the landscape of the Pine Barrens, a place where the modern world feels very far away. The story of the Jersey Devil serves as a reminder that there are still corners of the world that hold secrets. In an age of satellite imagery and global communication, we still crave the mystery of the unexplained. We want to believe that there is something wild and untamable waiting in the dark. The Jersey Devil provides that mystery, offering a glimpse into a world where magic and curses are just as real as science and logic. So the next time you find yourself driving through the long, lonely stretches of road in southern New Jersey, keep your eyes on the tree line. Listen closely to the sounds of the forest. That screech you hear might just be a barn owl or the wind whistling through the pines. But it also might be something else. It might be the 13th child of Mother Leeds, still wandering the woods waiting to be found.